In 1937, Sam Haber placed a handball into his son's crib. That simple gesture and that tiny ball would not only lead his baby boy to greatness, it would also lead him into the dark side of competition and fame. The boy in the crib was Paul David Haber, and growing up as a Jew in the Bronx during the 1930s, it soon became clear Paul wasn't your average boy. Brilliant, hyper-competitive, and confrontational, Paul's defiance at both authority and responsibility shone through at an early age. He would rather abandon his bicycle on the sidewalk when the wheel went flat than take it home. And it was this disregard for material and emotional values that would later reap havoc on his personal relationships, his body, and his career. His father, Sam Haber, was talented enough to play with the New York Yankees until an arm injury forced him to quit. But that didn't stop his career as a professional athlete. When Paul was 10 years old, his father was recruited by Bob Kendler as a handball player, a sport that was growing during the 1940s. Sam Haber's career bloomed, and the family moved out of the Bronx and into Chicago. Paul Haber was a skilled and talented handball player. He played his first handball game at the age of 6, and while his dad competed in the handball circuit, Paul would play with him, and they were good. So good that together they were elected into the Sports Hall of Fame as the first father and son handball players. But their father and son relationship wasn't easy, and Paul did not have a normal childhood. Paul's dad was often verbally and physically abusive to both his wife and his children. He would push Paul to do more and be better. Then, after he built him up, he would pull away and knock him down. It was a dangerous combination of aggression and competition, and Paul carried it through into his adult life. For the desire to win was in Paul's blood, and so was the athletic skill. With his father leading the way, Paul was influenced by some of the top handball players in the world, including Johnny Sloan. Paul witnessed the type of lifestyle they lived and the type of fame and recognition they achieved. It was the lifestyle that appealed to him, and he was more than willing to slip into it. Millionaire and business owner Bob Kendler ran the Handball Association. He defied the AAU, setting up his own championships. It was his influence in the sport that made both Sam and Paul handball champions. With his brilliant mind, quick wit, and charming attitude, Paul quickly learned the tricks of the trade, both on the court and off. He became a professional guest, showing up at various Handball Association managers' homes for dinners and free room and board. All his life, Paul thrived on taking chances and pushing the boundaries. If he made a few bucks along the way, then it was even better. As a teen, he went so far as dressing up like a scout and conning money out of the neighbors. Another time, he stole his father's new car and wrecked it. He ended up in the hospital with a brain injury for that prank. Later, he got an underage girl pregnant, and while he did get a job driving a laundry truck for a short time, he eventually skipped town and hid in California, abandoning both her and the baby. California had a calming effect on Paul. Focused on becoming a professional golfer at the time, he cleaned up his act and gave golf lessons between touring on the PGA. But the dark side was calling out to him, and the name it called was handball. In 1966, Paul won the National Handball Championship, making him more money than he ever made playing golf. And then, in 1967, he played Bill Yambrick, one of the best players of the time. Yambrick's game was one of stamina. A true athlete, Yambrick had no vices. He trained hard, ate healthy, and didn't smoke. One of the quickest and most ambidextrous players ever to grace a handball court, Bill Yambrick earned 3 YMCA single titles and was known as one of the nicest men in handball. Paul did not have this type of nice guy reputation. Whereas Yambrick was rumored to drink milk before bed, Paul smoked 5 packs of cigarettes a day, drank incessantly, and stayed out to all hours of the night. Paul was the bad boy of the handball circuit. won the National Handball Championship twice, but for him, that wasn't enough. In order to be the best, Haber had to beat the best. And in the 1960s, the best was Jimmy Jacobs. Jimmy Jacobs was considered the best athlete of all time. Like Haber, he played a number of different sports and was considered a god on the handball court. Haber was determined to defeat Jacobs and show him who the best really was. The match was set and thousands of dollars of bets made. It was the match of the year. Having made a name for himself in the handball circles, Haber was known for using every trick in the book to win. He would sometimes take long breaks to catch his breath, inspect a ball a little too often, and call numerous timeouts to change his handball gloves. He also attempted to intimidate referees. But at the same time, he added a certain finesse to the game. Watching Haber was both entertaining and awe-inspiring. The Haber-Jacob match ended abruptly. After playing one of the best matches of the decade, Paul ran into the wall and damaged his shoulder, causing an injury default. The biggest match of the year was over without a winner. Did Paul throw the game because he was losing to Jimmy and couldn't pay the debts? Or was the accident real? After playing for years, Haber agreed to one of his most legendary matches, the hands against the racket match in Memphis. The media loved Paul, but they weren't the only ones. Women were also attracted by his charm. But like all of Paul's other possessions, they were abandoned. Paul was married 4 times, and like his father before him, was physically and verbally abusive. The marriages were rocky and filled with extreme ups and downs. One of his wives, a former topless dancer, constantly hunted him down. She was always after him for money to support her and his sons. But alas, Paul was not destined to be a family man, and he turned his back on his children. Success didn't make Paul more responsible. Instead, the more successful he was on the handball court, the more destructive and out of control his personal life became. On the handball court, Haber was a hero and a superstar. He took the sport to a level of celebrity that was previously unknown, even going so far as to marry one of his wives, Mary, on the handball court. But while he hurt his wives, friends, and children, there was nothing he hurt more than his own body. It was the era of the swinging 60s, and Paul pushed his body to the limit with his relentless handball training, and also with his vices, which included smoking 5 packs of cigarettes a day and constant drinking. It was a time of wine, women, and fun, and Paul enjoyed himself to the point of insanity. Being a sports hero didn't mean Haber was above the law. He spent time in and out of jail. His sister said that even though he was disowned by his family years earlier because of his antics, she would still visit him in jail, but she couldn't always bail him out. Many times it was people from the Handball Association that ended up having to post his bail so he could play in a tournament that night and win the bets that kept the sport alive. But Haber never learned. The bad boy of handball was known to hang around bars and would bet on anything, from allowing fans to put out their cigarettes into the calluses on his hands to a game of pool where he excelled as a pool shark. While most handball players of the day had a regular job and played handball after hours, the 9-to-5 philosophy didn't apply to Paul. He traveled across the United States, going from tournament to tournament and from bar to bar. Thousands of dollars would run through his fingers like water. He would get spending money from the Handball Association, enough for him to fly into the city, eat well, and stay in fancy hotels. But Paul had his own lifestyle of booze and gambling to support. He was notorious for blowing the money at local bars on alcohol and cigarettes, and then taking a city bus on to the next destination. His extreme talent, brilliant mind, and competitive nature made him great, but it also led him down a destructive path. When Haber finally exited the handball court in the 90s, he solidified his credentials as a professional handball player and a modern-day Jewish sports hero. Paul sacrificed his family, friends, and body for this sport. Alone and nearly penniless, Paul died a legend in 2003.